Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board.
Nonprofit.
Hey. You are here for another episode of Nonprofit Everything, and we are so happy to have you. I am Stacey Wedding, and I am joined by my friend and co-host Andy Shurick, and we're here to answer all your questions about all the nonprofit jazz that's on your mind or on others' minds, or things that are like going on around the office that you're hearing people sort of whispering behind closed doors about. We really like those questions. So yes, we ask you to write in questions at nonprofiteverything.com or ping one of us or find us on the socials, and you can get in touch with us and let us know like what's that pressing matter that you want to make sure you hear on a future episode. And we always, I don't think we've ever not asked a question, Andy, do you, like that we've gotten? Like, I don't think that's ever happened. I'm thinking.
I don't think so either. I think we've even gotten questions that were like embarrassing to the person that asked them, and we did them anyway. We're like, that's what you want me to tell you about. Okie doke.
We did get a random, what was that cat one years ago?
Yeah, how do you get the smell of cat urine out of carpets? That was, I don't know how we ended up with that. And it wasn't a joke. At first I'm like, somebody's playing a prank on us. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was like some nice old lady in Florida. I don't know how she found, maybe, I really don't know how she got to us, but we did our best.
So you can ask us literally anything, but that one was just fun because I think we even made fun of it on the podcast, and like no disrespect to the woman who wrote it. She obviously was confused about who she was asking that question, but
yeah,
hey,
I don't know how it got to us.
We'll take it all
okay.
and we'll do our best. And yeah. And for a question like that, definitely a guest expert would be brought in. So no.
Yes.
Anyways, no, for those who listen to us, we don't pretend to be the guest experts. We share our own knowledge, our own experience, some things we know better than others, and we bring in people who may have more wisdom than at least me on all things numbers related, since Andy knows behind the scenes, for those who are listening right now, like I am not the most tech savvy, and that's being very kind in the way I say it. And Andy has to tolerate that every time we do these things, because you would think after doing this for so long, it would all be natural for me, but I still seem to get confused. So I am very grateful for Andy, and I'm grateful he makes me sound smarter than I am, at least, and sound more tech savvy than I am. So thank you, Andy.
Sure, I guess.
He's like, sure. Anyway, you're in for a treat with this episode, and we appreciate you listening. Enjoy. My friends and I were talking the other day about what we think the nonprofit sector will face in 2026. I'm curious, what do you both think is on the horizon?
Yeah. Boy, it's hard to not, at least for me, it's hard for me not to be pessimistic, I'll say. I don't feel good about just the sort of shared reality that we've lived in for the last 50 years since we created this thing called the third sector, which was supposed to be somewhere between corporations and government, like some sort of organization that wasn't in it for profit. They were in it to do good. And as a sort of side benefit to that, they didn't have to pay federal taxes on revenue. So that came about 50 something years ago. And it feels precarious now, to be honest. I think we're sort of chipping away at, some of the protections that have been in place that keep the nonprofit sector nonpartisan, and like the Johnson Amendment is constantly under fire because, and I'll say it out loud, it's because political parties have realized that they can't make money legally on donations to political parties. So if you give money to a candidate to run for office, they have to spend that money on things that will help that candidate get into that office, and they can't just pay themselves. But if we break the Johnson Amendment, one of the things they're allowed to do is all that soft money can just go straight into people's pockets with no recourse to where any of that money goes. This will fundamentally break the foundation system that we've been using for years and years. It will fundamentally break the way nonprofits relate to the community. We will splinter into nonprofits that are partisan one way, nonprofits that are partisan the other way. We'll end up with two food banks in a community because there's going to be the Republican food bank and the Democratic food bank, because that's the way that people will start thinking about the nonprofit sector, that it has to be partisan. It's a really scary thought, which is why places like the National Council for Nonprofits and many of the sort of national affinity groups for nonprofits are in the ears of their representatives saying, you need to protect the Johnson Amendment. We need to keep charity. We have to keep it so that it's not partisan in any way at all. And any direction we go that way is just going to make it worse for everybody. So you could tell that I'm not super happy. The way government grants went over the last year is also not made me happy. I don't think that having just arbitrarily decided that we just don't feel like funding this for reason X because the governor of that state happens to be a Democrat, we're going to no longer fund that particular opportunity. I don't think that's a really smart way to get things done. And my hope is that the grownups will eventually prevail and we will get back to a place where maybe the good side of this is that maybe we'll get to have a conversation about federal grants in general and like what the role of the federal government is in deciding who spends money in what way. We did the block grant experiment in the 1980s, and I realize I'm speaking like Spanish to a lot of folks that don't live in this world the way we do. But the block grant was an experiment that we did in the 1980s where we took some of the mechanism of giving money to individual organizations. We took it away and we gave it to the states because it was just simpler for the federal government to just chunk it out and give it to the states for the states to distribute, not realizing they created a second bureaucracy. And in places like in small states that don't have big like state government, like that just slows the whole process down and it makes it harder to spend the money, which the cynical side of me says was probably the point to begin with. So block grants may go away because those are non-functional anymore the way if you just decide not to give somebody the money. So I'm not feeling great about anything in general, except for the fact that in all of us that are in the sector working hard are in it for the right reason. And we're all kind of on the side of good. And if we continue to like make noise about what a dumb idea that is, maybe somebody in power will actually listen to us for a change. You know, maybe this is the breaking point and we get something better at the end of it. I don't know. That's my, that's where I feel like we're going this next year.
Yeah. Trying to find a glimmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious to know, because one of the things that came up for me, similar to you, is just thinking about the scrutiny about the sector as a whole that nonprofits have faced over the past year and just justifying their existence and things that we've never had to actually like think about before, like the sector has had to start to think about. And I'm just, I went into like, I was thinking about that this year thinking, I don't think that's going away. I think that the fear that led people to, start making decisions that are much more fear-based, it is going to prevail. At least that's what I hear and see out there, is just a lot more of how do we protect ourselves? A lot of self-censorship, right? Like around terminology and trying to just fit into whatever box needs to be fit into to continue to sustain and not have like be put in the spotlight of scrutiny and potential funding cuts. I don't think that's going away. Like I don't. And that bothers me and upsets me greatly, like it does you, because it's not, I don't know. It's like, what a waste of time and energy, but I also can't live there. And so it's kind of like, okay, so does the positive of this ramp up? I feel like there is more, I hear more nonprofits talking about advocacy these days than they ever have in the past. I think they're scared of it to some degree and aren't always sure of the rules around it. But I hear people saying, I need my voice to be like, my voice needs to be heard. Our voices need to be heard. We need to come together and unite because we're going to be stronger together. And that part is the positive I see as a trend in some of these things, is if we can start to band together and kind of work less in our kind of siloed organizational mentality, and more like, we are now not just protecting our organizations, we're protecting the sector as a whole. And that looks and feels a lot different. But that is what, you think about all of history. And when people come together, it's sometimes for those reasons. And it feels a bit like a waste of energy in the moment, but maybe long term there's some benefits. So I don't know. Do you sort of, where do you fall on that line of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, just to get technical in a really boring way that may make people just quit the podcast forever, like one of the changes in the tax law from 2025 to 2026 makes no sense whatsoever from a corporate philanthropy standpoint. So the rule used to be that there was like a maximum. You couldn't spend more than a certain amount of money on philanthropic stuff and then still call it a tax write-off for your business. You just weren't allowed to. And then they made a rule on top of that, and remember Newman's Own salad dressing, right?
Yeah.
So they created a for-profit company that would normally be, that is taxed normally, but then 100% of their profits are then given to a foundation. And the foundation doesn't have to pay taxes on that because the way they're connected. So there were sort of positive ways that we were seeing for corporate philanthropy to work in sort of pro-social ways. It was actually a really, really good thing. And there's this big meta-analysis that they did years ago, which talked about when corporate philanthropy is positive and when it's a waste of time. And the way it came out is that it was this weird sort of scooping curve, that you got the best benefit if you, or it affected your bottom line in the best way. We'll say it that way. Your bottom line got affected in the best way if you did absolutely nothing or if you went all in. So those were the two extremes were the ones that paid off. Any sort of middle of the road, we give a little bit of money, it's non-strategic, that's just a waste of time. You shouldn't do it. You either do nothing or you go all in. And so the most recent tax law change basically said, well, we don't care about that. There's now a floor, so you have to give some if you're going to get any benefit from it. And the ceiling is also really low too. So the only way you get a tax benefit is in that middle, which is the place where it doesn't actually do you any good anyway. So it's almost like they saw, I don't think anybody used their brain when they constructed the tax law that way to do that. They were trying to figure out, how do we make more money to pay for this dumb thing? And they just came up with a stupid idea and never asked anybody if it was smart or not. So the interesting thing on that, though, is that for years, Stacey and I have been down on gala events, right? We're sort of known for hating gala events because they're a complete and total waste of time. However, the 2026 tax law now makes gala events a good idea.
Yes.
Because corporate philanthropy is now a waste of time. You shouldn't do it. But if it's a marketing expense, if you can call something a marketing expense, that directly offsets your revenue, which means it's free from tax. It's an expense that you don't get to, it's not profit anymore. And it works the exact same way that giving money to a nonprofit would. And you get the benefit of participating with a nonprofit. And the nonprofit now has a better incentive to sell you space in the program and put your name in lights on the side of the building and get you to sponsor the drunk driving home thing and all the other absurd things that Stacey and I love to make fun of with gala events. 2026 in Andy's world is the year of the gala, because this is the year that it actually makes financial sense for a nonprofit to do it for the first time ever. Can you believe that?
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, I have things to unpack and things to add, but
there was a long way to go to get there, wasn't it?
No, can we start though? So I need to just I hope our listeners don't hate me for again going down the rabbit hole of so what I had read and heard was and I have not read all the tax law in detail because that's not my jam, but I had heard and read about corporations have now been hit with like a 100% floor. Like, so like they must give at least 1% of taxable income to claim deductions, but that's basically
a huge
all
amount
they
of money
were
for most.
That's huge for most. And if any of the big ones that we're doing that were probably around the 1% mark anyway. So it's sort of a wash. Like, it's not like, it's like, there were predictions that it could lead to a huge like reduction in corporate giving. But I read something about that. Like, but I don't see that based on what we're talking about. Like, it sounds like it's just about how it's classified. It's more about classification, and more like giving stays the same, like same in that area would be like, I don't know. What am I missing, Andy? Like from my non-finance brain.
For some corporations, the way they're formed, they get to take a tax break for donations, for charitable contributions. So it's the same as spending the money, because you only get taxed on your profit, not on your revenue. So if you have an expense that offsets the profit, you only get taxed on the profit. So for a while, they were allowing you to classify charitable deductions as an expense. At any rate, up until a ceiling of a particular amount of money, you couldn't go past that. Why that ceiling was there, no one knows. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for it to be there to begin with, but there just was one. Now they've decided to create this floor. And the floor of 1%, when you think about for revenue, is huge. Like, for the amount of money that most corporations make, that's a lot of money. Like even a small, like a dry cleaners that brings in $1 million a year. 1% of $1 million is more money than most dry cleaners give to charity in a year, and they're not going to bother with it. It's so most of the folks that we're talking to when we're going for corporate donations, they either have a foundation where that foundation exists specifically to do that. By the way, the new tax law breaks the way the money flows from the corporation to the foundation as well, because of the purpose of the foundation in many of those reasons is to protect money from tax, because if you move it to the foundation, you don't get taxed on it, right? That's the whole purpose of it. But now we're classifying that as part of that 1% as well. So that part of that goes away. I think we're going to see a dramatic reduction in the amount of charitable donations from smaller organizations, from organizations that don't have it as part of their overall strategy. Or don't have a foundation that you're receiving the money from the corporate foundation that you're receiving the money from. So that, I mean, I could be totally wrong. I mean, this is just Andy's interpretation of like what the tax law looks like now and how people were using it before. But I don't think corporations are going to change their behavior. I don't think they're going to look at this and say, this is a new floor, so we're going to have to give more money so we get up above the floor. It's going to be, somebody's going to go, oh, yeah, your department doesn't get any money this year for that. You can't do that. And so that's up to us, the nonprofit sector, to say, now we're going to go talk to, instead of talking to the community, whatever they call them, people, right?
Corporate giving person or community relations or whatever. Yeah.
We're not talking to them. We're talking to marketing. Marketing has more money already anyway. You wanted to get the money from marketing to begin with. Now you have an excuse to go get the money from marketing. But that's a different conversation that we're not, as nonprofits, we're not quite as used to having. So that's going to be a big change. About how do you want us to put your logo on the food bags we're giving out to people? Probably not. But what can we do, right? Is there a way that we can talk about what a great citizen you are that counts as marketing instead of counting as corporate philanthropy?
Well, the Chronicle of Philanthropy had a Trends to Watch webinar not too long ago. And I mean, they projected, and it was just a projection, but they said, given some of the new, like what you're talking about with the new tax bill and stuff, they're estimating corporate giving will be reduced by $4.5 billion. And that, that starts to, when you take that and then you take the other potential deductions, because the other thing with the tax bill that I think is going to be interesting, and there's some different schools of thought on it. And we've got the bulk of taxpayers, like 90% or whatever taxpayers, right? Like who have taken a standard deduction, never itemized, right? Now the fact that they can single, like me as an individual or me as a couple, like as an individual, I can deduct up to $1,000, right? And as a married couple, I can do $2,000. Right. Like that that could incentivize me to actually give, but that's a different kind of donor. So when you look at like these nonprofits and the messaging and think about if you're a nonprofit, I don't know, like there's nothing that's less attractive than starting to talk about tax law when you're talking about a donation. It's kind of the antithesis of what everybody is trained to do, right? Because, hey, you could itemize now. Oh, like, and so it moves it from a heart-centered activity, which is what philanthropy is about and what giving is about. Like, it's much more, you make it from a point of emotion and then you justify it with rationale. But now it's moving it straight to the head from the start and being rational. And I think it doesn't, like, that approach, there's not a really easy way to do that. Like, you can sit there but like that shouldn't lead your marketing with it. Good grief, right? Like, to me, and that's what some of the suggestions are change your marketing approach. I'm like, no, like, I think you will lose people. Like, everyone's going to be like, right? But I also think, and then like the thing I'm more worried about is like the big, I don't know what you think, Andy, and like maybe we can take a minute and just sort of share this with folks, but like from the standpoint of the people who are making more. So, right, like those who were itemizing, right, they've got new hurdles, is my understanding, because right now, whatever, 0.5, half of 1% of their adjusted gross income is deductible. So that basically, if I'm $100,000, only donations above $500 is my understanding. Tell me if my math is right, will count for that deduction. And so, I don't know, like it's weird for me because I give, my husband and I give. And so like, to me, that doesn't feel like that. And I also don't even know if we fall into the brackets that, I mean, I don't know, we're probably not wealthy enough to even fall into these brackets we're talking about. But the point is like, I guess I'm just like, will that impact, would that really make a difference if I've got enough money? Like, but people are predicting it will. I mean, like, that's what all the things are saying, is that is actually going to be a huge reduction for people who actually have the big bucks. And there's other things tied into that I'm probably forgetting right now, Andy, right? Like, I'm being super like broad about this, but I guess in general, like the forecast out there is, okay, giving is going to decrease this year, right? Is the bottom line. Like and so, or we're going to get like that bunch giving where you get nothing this year, but you get it all next year because people are going to put it all into a donor advised fund, or they're going to save it all up so they can meet all these new tax laws. So like and so I'm just sitting there going, this will be interesting to see how it plays out, especially because, again, for years, the fundraising, like philanthropy professionals have talked about giving. That's like bottom on the list for people. It's usually not like the tax deduction. It's right. Like, it's not the reason they give. So maybe my hope is that none of this will matter, but I'm also kind of like a realist. I think people are watching all of this a little, they may not understand it, or they may understand it too late for it to matter. Like, if I'm like, it's not until tax time that they're going to be going, oh, wait, I should have, like, next year, tax time, that they realize they should have done some things differently. And now they've missed the year to do it. I mean, so to me, I think it's going to be, I feel like there will be a decline, and especially because it's showing donor trust is down. People are nervous about the economy. So I don't mean to be negative Nelly, but I do think that I don't think it's looking good from a financial lens for nonprofits. Are you like ready to jump out of your skin, Andy? Because I said a whole bunch of stuff and you want to go back and get into the details of all of it. And it's okay.
Sort of. I know, but we've beaten this one over the head a little bit, haven't we?
I know.
I think, so both of us sound like we're not feeling great about 2026. I think that's probably there are opportunities, like any kind of change. There's always an opportunity. It's a matter of spending time to look at it. I think, Stacey, you're 100% right that the tax, as irritating as the tax law changes are, that isn't why people give. That's why some people give, but those people are jerks, and we really don't want their money to begin with. It's like, but the people that we like are engaged with and are interested in our mission and are trying to help us make the world a better place. Like, the tax thing is like, you're right. It's an annoyance around tax time. You're like, oh, wow, this didn't work this year because this was less than this number. The U.S. government's a bunch of jerks, right? That's their takeaway. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with like whether or not they made a good decision to make the donation. mean, I think we did see an influx of money into donor advised funds at the end of December because this rule was coming and people were like, well, I might as well take it now. And so we saw some money go into donor advised funds. Eventually that'll trickle back out into the sector. I mean, if other things don't break, but yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's not the worst thing in the world, but we could be totally proven wrong. You never know. There could be something else happens. And when, what is it? The Giving USA study comes out in like next whatever, and then they're like, oh look, 2026 was a banner year for whatever reason. And we're like, and Stacey and I will say, well, we just didn't know what we were talking about, did we?
I know. The other, like, a couple things though I want to give a nod to, and I think it is exciting and also like a little intimidating, is the advancement of technology. We hear it all the time. Andy and I joke about it, for those of you who've listened to us for a while. Like, before, AI was a thing long before any of us were talking about it. And then Andy and I had brought in a guest expert a couple of years ago, or whenever that was, like, who talked about some AI stuff. And it was still like, we were still ahead of the curve on this thing. And now, like, AI is in almost every, like, I think probably it comes across my Outlook every day, Andy, I don't know about yours, like multiple, like, webinars and sessions on AI for your nonprofit. But I do think we're not going back. And I do think that there's some organizations that are leaning into that in a really progressive way and figuring out ways to, not to be smart about it. Like, there's the key, but like, there's a really cool, I learned about, there's an institute out of Boston that's like one of their sole purposes is like they took like the best technologists and the best people in safety and ethics based on a variety of standards and like put them together to help kind of protect, particularly if there's curriculum or educational curriculum being developed for schools or for kids, like to make sure it's safe, make sure it's, that it's quality, it's good info. And I think we're going to see more of those kinds of things. There being a need of those. And also organizations getting kind of clever and figuring out how they can scale in ways maybe they're programming that they couldn't before because of it. But I don't, I also think with every positive, right, it's hard for me to say it without saying, but there's a lot of things to be careful about with going this direction too and adopting all this technology. And so I see both excitement around it and some like really smart risk management needed around it. I don't know, like, so I'm going to put that in the positive camp because I feel like we need a positive. I don't know. Andy, where are you with this? Are you like no negative camp?
No,
like,
I don't think I'm negative, but I mean, there's a reason that direct mail still uses Courier as the monospaced font in direct mail.
Yeah.
Right. And that, I mean, and if we think about why that continues to be, because they'll A/B test it all the time. They'll send one sans serif and then they'll send one that's in boring old Courier, and they'll get a better response rate from Courier. And the reason for that is authenticity, is that people that's what they expect it to look like. That's what they've been trained to see as like a real direct mail piece, and that's what they're going to actually respond to. And so that's, I mean, maybe one day the science may change. One day we may A/B test it and it's going to come out differently. But I think like the authenticity of like, is this a human voice that's talking to me, is going to become a big issue for this kind of stuff. I wouldn't want to be on the cutting edge of anything that makes my donors concerned that we're not real people. So that's my, could it make things faster? Sure. But we know anything that speeds something up just gives you more time to like do other things. It makes as much work as it saves, I think, in real life. I haven't seen it like speed anything up for me at all. But that's one anecdotal point of data and is worth about as much as you'd pay for it. I don't know. I think, so it's like, as you're talking, I'm like, so you think AI might be a thing, right? It's kind of a joke now, but we'll see if it really turns into something that the sector embraces it and it turns into something we all use maybe one day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more, I feel like it's going to happen sooner. And I think it's going to, I think if nothing else, it's going, my concern with it is just not wanting people to replace, the fear of, right, like replacing people with technology. And I just think it's about like, maybe it's creating different skills and new skill sets of, you hear about prompt engineers and the kinds of prompts you give AI and that kind of stuff. Like maybe it's just about a new type of thinking. And that's what I hope is like we can lean into of how do we use it to streamline and make ourselves more efficient where we need to, but like not get rid of the human factor, because human factor, we're already in a community, like a society where people are craving more human connection than ever because they've lost it, like a lot of it after COVID. And so I don't think that solves for that. And so that piece is a little bit like nerve wracking, but, so the other two, like the other couple things I wanted to just mention for trends, because I have been giving this thought. I think I can, like, studies and research is showing, and I continue to feel like flexibility for the most flexible work environments seem to be the ones that are keeping and retaining employees, as far as whether it's the hybrid work environment, whether it's figuring out ways to allow flex, if it's the kind of position that can allow for flex time and like more people kind of living their life. Like, okay, I got to take my kid to the doctor's appointment. I got to like go do this, but like allowing a little more of that, less like where our model of 8 to 5, 9 to 5 came from. So I think that's an exciting thing that I hope people lean into, because I think it's going to, the workforce is going to say, you do that, or I'm like not going, like, I'm not going to go take your job offer, or I'm not going to stay here or whatever. I think we're going to see that. I also am thinking a lot about, you think about boomer generation and retirement, and you think about leadership transitions and executive transition. I think we're really reaching a cusp of that is going to create maybe some new ways of, there's some what I worry about, like, I can't say it without saying I worry about it. I think having new energy and new ways and approaches of doing things and looking at things can be incredibly helpful. And I embrace that. And if we don't do executive transition planning thoughtfully and make sure our organizations are built up on a lot of different levels, and that we're grooming people and not just putting in positions to manage and lead, but have no clue how to do that and have never been given any kind of like training or coaching or support on how to do that, like then we're setting people up for failure to lead organizations. And particularly when you talk about like soft skills in younger generations are struggling a little more because of the technology factor. I think we have to have more of an investment now than ever in like, how are we investing in our people? And we're saying that at the same time we're saying there's not going to be enough money. So that part is a little bit like putting those two together make me nervous. But I do think the trend is we're going to see more and more people retiring early, and people leaving the sector altogether. I mean, that's what the research is showing, and that is devastating. So how do we start to like figure out ways to take care of people beyond, in a way that's meaningful so they want to work in the sector and stay in the sector? I've yammered on. Andy, what did I miss? What do you disagree with that I just said?
No, I don't disagree with any of it. I'm not a big proponent of generational differences. I think that's reductive. Only because it's just like, it feels like memes to me, like, oh, Gen X is all like this. And you're like, well, sometimes maybe in some contexts, but I also don't like the, remember the, like the Myers-Briggs, that was like a big thing at once. They'd make you fill out the form and they'd say, oh, you're a B7 or whatever. I didn't even know. And I was just like, made me so annoyed. I'm like, what? You don't know me. Like, just because I filled out some bubbles, like, you don't know anything about me. But that could just be the Gen X in me. I don't know, maybe. No, but you're right. We've been talking about this for a long time, right? Is there is a generation change in terms of leadership. Like we're seeing lots of organizations that have had founders starting to step away, and new people need to walk into those roles. So that's going to accelerate just as we get just further into the future. Does the nonprofit sector, I mean, one of the things that we saw sort of coming along in the last 10 years is things like certified B corporations and things like that, where people are trying to thread the needle between, well, this nonprofit thing is like kind of hard and doesn't make a whole lot of sense from a financial perspective, but we also don't want to be a soulless corporation. Is there something in the middle? So maybe, I don't know, maybe 2026 is the year that finally starts to congeal a little bit, and people realize that there are ways to do the things that we want to do in the nonprofit sector without all the nonsense baggage that the federal government puts on you for being a nonprofit. Like maybe there's an easier way to get some of this stuff done by looking at how you're formed. Because we said this all the time. The only reason that you would want to be a nonprofit is, number one, you get the sort of cachet of being like, we're on the side of good. Like, and when people give you a donation, it's tax deductible. As soon as that tax, and we're back to taxes again. Thanks, Andy. As soon as that tax deductible piece goes away, like, then why is it there? Why are we doing all of this extra work to do this so that we can say that we're tax deductible? And the federal government has proven time and time again, they're just as willing to give a contract to a for-profit as they are to a nonprofit. So many of the federal grants that you see don't require that a nonprofit take the grant. Some of them do, but many of them don't. It could just be a straight up contract with a regular corporation.
Yeah.
And then, so why are you even doing it for that purpose? You don't have to be a nonprofit to get that money. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of opportunity, which is why it's fun to be in this space, right? It's fun to talk about these things because it's not boring. It's always changing. There's always challenges to have. And I get to talk to Stacey about them, which is even better.
We get to have bounce this around a little bit, and I get to pain Andy with my broad generalities about tax stuff and make him cringe. If only you could see us on camera, and I can tell on his face when he's like, oh, either I said something. So don't take exactly what I say about tax stuff verbatim. Hopefully you as a listener know that, but just, I'm talking in generalities, Rich.
and don't take anything I say about human interactions as verbatim either, because apparently I don't know how to do that either.
Though, Andy, we should, for anyone who's interested in saying what exactly are the tax changes, like, we should probably drop a link. Maybe we can drop a link in the show notes just for those who want to dig in more.
We'll put a link in the show notes to some good analysis of how that all fits together. And you can sort of make your own decisions too. Thanks for joining us this week, Stacey, and I appreciate that you've taken a half an hour or so out of your busy week of putting out nonprofit fires to listen to us babble about things. In the intro, Stacey mentioned that we don't impersonate guest experts, that we actually bring on real guest experts, which actually gave me a hilarious idea. I think we need to, at one point, just like use a weird voice and like pretend we're a guest. Should we do that? Like some goofy British accent or something?
I'm going to figure out a way, because you know what? I'm awful at those fake accents or fake, so I think maybe that's on you. That was your idea. So that's all you, my friend.
So stay tuned for that. You never know when we could have a guest expert, but it could just be Andy with a weird accent. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.